Hi guys, this is a recap of season 2, episode 150 of Beyond the Gates. But before we get to the recap, if you've been to this channel or maybe you're new to the content, feel free to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. So how I like to do the recaps, I will give you a character and then I'll explain what they're doing in the scenes. The scenes that I talk about may not be in the exact same order in which they aired in the episode. I like to go from my least favorite or least impactful to most favorite or most impactful scenes. And then if I have any comments or theories or anything like that, I will let you know at the end of the video. So without further ado, let me tell you what these characters have been up to. So this episode today, I would consider this one like the love episode. So it was like a lot of couples being together on this episode. So we start with Danny and Andre. Danny and Andre, they're having a couple's day in because they were invited to the open mic night, that Noah was going to do. But they decided to cancel and, stay in. And so they had this moment where Danny bought these adult coloring books so they can, kind of do an activity while also having, spending time together. And so during their time together, they have a conversation about, Bill and how she, put more focus on Bill when she should have put more focus on her husband. And she, asked for his forgiveness. And then Andre asked for her forgiveness as well because instead of, being supportive, he acted like a child. So, but Danny doesn't feel like, he should be, sorry for anything pretty much. And so they eventually, bring out the wine and everything. And it's the same bottle that Heather, sent them. And so Andre is a little rattled and he wants to know, where she got that from. And she said that she liked it so much she bought another bottle. And she says that, whoever bought the first one had expensive taste. And so Andre has this flashback of, his encounters with Heather. And then when Danny, while she's waiting on him to open the bottle, she's having a flashback of her telling Vanessa about, being with Bill. And then when Andre pops the cork on the bottle, then she, jumps, she's startled a bit. But for the most part, they just kind of, just spend time together and try to reconnect after the whole situation with Bill. And Heather that we know about, but she doesn't know about it yet. And so they eventually agree to just go to their bedroom and then they're intimate. Then we have a scene with Nicole and Kyle, and they're getting ready because they're going to Noah's his open mic night. And then we see Noah and Deanna. And we find out that the open mic night, there was too many people. They went late. And so he didn't get to, be a part of it. So he calls his dad and, lets them know that, it won't be this week and all of that. And so Nicole has this idea to have the open mic night at her house, just really intimate. So they pretty much, spend that time, calling everybody and letting them know that it is going to be at Nicole's house. Okay, so we have a moment with Vernon and Anita. First, Anita, she's, working on her music and she's still not there with her vocals. And then Vernon comes in. He's, been mentoring new politicians and all of the up and comings. And he said the preparation was a lot. So they get the phone call from Nicole to come over. And then we have a moment where Vanessa is with Joey and she tells Joey, that they're going to the open mic night. And Joey says, he didn't want to go. And Vanessa's like, okay, that's why I only reserved one. And so she gets ready to leave. And then when she leaves, Isaiah walks in with Joey. Okay, so Isaiah and Joey have this conversation. Isaiah wants to know pretty much like why Joey took the time to care for him, when he needed him the most, when he was in trouble and all of that. And so Joey explains that he saw himself in Isaiah. And, Joey tells Isaiah that he grew up in a household with a father who was really demanding and all of that, just like how Isaiah grew up with Elon, who was also demanding, and nothing that they ever did was right. And so Joey says that he never had children, but he's done a lot of things, but he sees Isaiah as his legacy. So pretty much the only thing that he did right, in the world. So, people are going to remember his negative things, but they also have to remember that, he helped Isaiah, and Isaiah being a good person is his, legacy. Then we have a moment where Vanessa comes back, but because she thinks it's canceled, and then she gets that text from Nicole saying that it's going to be at her house. So we have this moment where Shanice and Ashley, they're at work, and Shanice's Aunt Monica comes up and she wants to talk to them because she wants to get their side of the story before she goes in to talk to Bill, because Bill has complained. And they tell her, that Haley, was in the bed with him, and they follow protocol pretty much. And then we see Naomi walk up, and Naomi says, they did what they needed to do, so they shouldn't be getting in trouble because of Haley. And so Monica, leaves to go talk to Bill. And when she leaves, Naomi tells them that if they, get in trouble, she'll call her granddad and he'll fix all of that. So then Ashley and Naomi have this conversation about girls' night and all of that. So that leads to this moment where Jacob and Grayson, they are at Ashley's place, and when Naomi and Ashley walk in, they surprise her, and Jacob says, I got you the trip to Mexico, but we can't go right now, so I thought that we would just have this moment here to celebrate. And so Grayson has everything all decorated, and he made some, special drinks and all of that. So that's all for their interaction. Okay, so we have a brief moment with Shanice and Ted. He brings her chocolates. And then she informs him about, how she could be getting in trouble when it comes to the whole Bill situation. And so he tells her that he has other chocolates in his office that, if she gets in trouble or whatever, she can come get, the other box of chocolates that's in his office. Then later we see them, she goes to the office, and, they make plans to be together after she gets off work. Then there's a moment with Shanice and her Aunt Monica where she tells her that, she believed her and all of that, and she's not going to do anything when it comes to, disciplining Ashley and Shanice. And so she takes some of Shanice's chocolates, and she wants to know, like, what they're for. And she tells her that Ted just bought them just because. And then she, gives her an update on Ted wanting to meet her brothers. And they talk about how, like, those two are getting on their nerves and everything. And Aunt Monica says that Ted must really be in love. He must really have found his person, and he's letting the past go and all of that because he wants to meet the brothers. Okay, so we have another moment where Eva is in Orphe Jeans, and she's actually doing some work, and she's waiting on Isaiah. But while she's waiting on Isaiah to meet with his friend, she decides to do a little work, and her mom and Detective Malone walks in. And her mom, Leslie wants to sit down with her because she don't like her sitting alone. But Detective Malone, he asks about Eva, and how she's feeling and everything after the surgery. And then he leaves to go get the table for Leslie as well. And so Eva tells her to go over there with him. Pretty much she's good sitting by herself. So Leslie and Detective Malone gets to, to their table, and they are talking to each other and everything, and Eva is eavesdropping. And and so they're saying some little pretty, raunchy things to each other. Eva is disgusted. So she's overhearing, Detective Malone tell Leslie that he really normally doesn't like to be backed into a corner, because she gave him an ultimatum or whatever, and he said, but for her he'll make an exception. And he talks about her dress and how, well she looks in it. She says, she knows he likes it because he bought it. And then he decides he wants to ask her to move into his boat. And his boat is, I think his boat is named Sheila. And so Leslie is really, she's happy that he made the gesture, but she says she's not, a boat person. And so he kind of gets a little frustrated, and he gets up to go to the men's room, and Eva comes over to talk to her mom, and she tells her the reason why she's being so distant with him and she's not, accepting things from him is because she's still holding out hope for something that will never happen, and that is to be with Ted. And so when Detective Malone comes back, she kind of apologizes to him, Leslie does, and he says he's okay. But then we see Isaiah walk in this moment, and when Isaiah walks in, he sees, Leslie with Detective Malone, and he asks Eva about it, and she tells him, that they can talk about their day, at her place. And so they get up to leave, and before they leave, they go to, speak to Leslie and Detective Malone. They say goodbye and all that. And so when they leave, Leslie says that, she has to express herself through music. And so Leslie gets up to sing her feelings to Detective Malone. So that's their part. And then we get this moment with all of the people, who came to Noah's open mic night at Nicole's house. And so those people are Kyle, Nicole, Deanna, we have Vanessa, and then we get Vernon and Anita. And so, Noah is nervous. He's, talking to Deanna, and she's trying to figure out, does he have a song he's going to sing? And he says that he came up with this song because after his mom died, he never thought that, he would be in a position to try to let somebody in. So the song, I don't know if it was written for Deanna, but it was inspired by their newfound relationship. And so she's happy about it. She bought him this gift for his guitar. And so, he still he has these nerves. He tuned his guitar and all of that because it was out of tune. Then he gets up and he performs, and, everybody's loving it. And then after the fact, we get this moment with Noah and Anita, and she tells him, she's noticing, that look that he gave of nerves, and she gives him a personal experience, about her and the Articulates and how they performed at this small, place. And one day, one of the biggest, managers or AR persons walked in, and, so it's kind of like you never know who's going to be at your small, event. And she tells him, that she sees the talent in him, and she offers him, an invite to, come to her rehearsal because, they're doing the Articulates album. And so she says that, she wants to mentor him. And so I guess we'll see more of that. We also have a moment with Vernon and Kyle. And Vernon wants to talk to Kyle because he's heard that, Kyle and Nicole are, more serious. And he's starting to, talk to Kyle about Nicole being accomplished and all of that. And Nicole sees him talking to Kyle, and she walks up and she tells Vernon that, tonight is supposed to be about Kyle being a dad and being happy for his son, and so Vernon says, okay, we'll talk about this later. And so then Vernon leaves to go over there with Anita, and he reminds Anita of their deal, which they made a deal that, they would spend half of the night at Nicole's house, but the other half of the night was their night. And so they leave, and then when they get back home, we just see them going up to their room on the elevator. Then we get a moment with Nicole and Kyle, they're lovey-dovey. We also get a moment with Deanna and Noah. They actually, he said he couldn't go home. He was so excited about that night. And so they go to Orphe Jean's, and so they have a moment, a little sweet moment. And then we get another, like I said, we get that moment with Shanice and Ted. And so, like I said, this episode pretty much was kind of like the little love episode where, you had a bunch of couples, interacting with each other. That's all I have for this recap part of it, but I do have some notes. The whole thing when it comes to Noah, I feel like Noah should have been casted as Kyle's younger brother. I think the actor looks a little bit too old. I don't know if he was picked because he, could play the guitar and he's a singer, and that's kind of like what they were looking for in the moment. But to me, he comes off as a little older. And so I think, he looks a little bit too old for Deanna at times as well. But I am glad that they have given her a love interest and something else to do other than just be mad at Joey. And then they were kind of going down this road of, having her talk to her dad and all that, which I know they'll probably do that at times again, but it was seeming like they were going down a path that was going to make her have like a nervous breakdown. And I really didn't like that path. So, I mean, I guess if I got to accept Noah, I will, because I like her having a love interest and being happy, still being, cautious of Joey. I don't want that to go away, but I don't want them to paint her as somebody who is a little crazy. Also, there was a moment where Andre, when he said he wanted to apologize to Danny, I thought maybe in that moment he was going to tell her, but he didn't. It felt like he was going to, but he decided not to in that moment. I wish he had told her, because I just feel like Heather is going to, be on that whole Leslie thing, but I think she's going to be a little worse with it. When it comes to, coming around and, trying to get information and all of that, and just kind of sneaking around town with Danny not knowing who she is, and, trying to befriend her and everything. The same way Leslie did with Nicole when she acted like she was her patient. Before the whole blow up and everything with Eva. And then also in this episode, I like how they showcase that, maybe Leslie is a singer as well, because I don't know, they're doing this Articulates album and they are trying to put Barbara's vocals in the album. I don't know if they're setting it up for us to get an Articulates album that includes Noah and also includes Leslie, where she can sing with her mom. I think that would be, at least on one song. I think it would be really nice, for them to do that for her. Even though I know the history with Leslie and I'm not letting her off the hook or anything, but I think, that would be a way to honor her mom as well. So I don't know if the reason why they had all of them singing today was for, in the future for us to get a, moment where Leslie is going to be a part of the album, and Noah as well. But I think maybe Noah, when it comes to like the music part of it, not so much as, having vocals on the album, but just, just being a part of it in that way. I also like the fact that we did finally get this moment with Andre and Danny. You know, they kind of talked about it a little bit, but they didn't go in depth when it came to it. They just agreed that they would just kind of focus on each other. But I feel like it's going to come back up at some point. Maybe not with this situation, but the whole Bill and Danny situation is going to come up at some point again. But I think it'll be from Bill's perspective instead of Danny's perspective this time around. But like I said, today's episode was okay. It was, you know, the love episode. That's what I'm calling it. I don't think it was as good as the previous 2 episodes, but it wasn't bad as well. We got a lot of different actors in this episode. We've actually been getting a lot of episodes where a lot of the cast is being able to be in the episode. Because I know there was one time we were, you know, getting just a few actors in each episode. But I think I'm liking the fact that we're getting to see more people in the episodes. And they've been doing this maybe about like the last 2 weeks or so. We've seen a lot of the cast in each episode. But that's all I have for this recap. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Thanks for watching this Beyond the Gates recap. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you later.